All right. Hi, everybody. Excuse my voice. The smoke in the air has gotten to me. So I do know that a lot of you guys have been absent or missing. So we're going to do this Charles by Shirley Jackson. It was assigned in class. So here's a video of me teaching it to you. So you're going to need your computer, or if you have the actual printout, that would be great. But if you just have your computer, you're going to go ahead and go to Google Classroom. You're going to click under Unit 1, Theme and Stories, and it's going to be the Charles by Shirley Jackson. So once you click it, I have the actual copy of the story here. All right, so I'll give you some time. Go ahead and pause this video so you can get there, and then we can get started. All right, so I want you to start by doing the first three things that we talked about when we're reading a story. So you're going to identify what your title is, and we have it here. It's Charles. And then we already have our author. And so her name is Shirley Jackson. So if you remembered from class, whenever we're doing a citation, which means when we're writing quotes and we need the part where we're giving the author credit, we're using the last name. So anytime we need to cite, we're going to use Jackson and then put our page number. So notice there's no page numbers on here. So what we did in class is we added our own. So we called this page here page 1. So what I'm going to do on mine, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it here, is I'm actually going to add some page numbers. Line numbers, format, page numbers. Here we go. All right, so I added some page numbers for you. So there's page 1, and then when we scroll down, we have page, there you are, page 2, and then page 3. So wherever you're getting your quotes from, you're going to make sure that you have the author's last name and our page number. So I'll remind you once we get to the questions on how to do that citation. So now that we've identified our title, we have page numbers, and we have an author's last name, we already know our citation. We're going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom, all the way down to the questions. So right now we see text-dependent questions. I'm just going to scoot this back a little bit because zoomed in quite close for me. All right, so the first question is asking you to identify a theme. So go ahead and highlight the word theme. So I'm going to highlight that in green because it's easier for me to see. Absolutely not. Okay, let's highlight that in yellow. It might be a little bit easier to see. Okay, there we go. So I'm highlighting the word theme, and it says in the story Charles. So that's the story that we're reading. It also tells you to cite a quote. That's the next instruction that the question is asking. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight cite a quote. So we already know what a quote is. That means it comes from the text. So any words that come in the text, that's what we're citing. But when it's asking for that citation, this is what it means. So it's when we add the author's last name. So I'm just going to do it over here. That's the problem. Editing. So that means author's last name. So I'm going to put Jackson, and then I'm going to put the number symbol. So that's what it means to cite. So when we're citing a quote, citing a quote, that means find your quote from the text and then just make sure you have the citation where you're giving credit and you're pulling it from the story. It also asks us to do one more thing. It says that we need to have reasoning. So whenever we have reasoning, again, that's when we explain what our quote means. So in total, if you look at how many things we highlighted in this question, that's how many sentences we need. So we need to find our theme, that's sentence number 1. We need to cite a quote, so find a quote from the text and put our citation, that's sentence number 2. And then for sentence number 3, we need to explain why we picked that quote. So this question is going to be the question that has the most points because I want to make sure that you guys are getting theme, you're finding the right evidence, and that you can explain your answer. So this is going to be the bulk of your assignment. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, it says read the following line from the text. So that means here's a quote from the text. It says, Charles, she said, we don't have any Charles in the kindergarten. What impact does this line have on the meaning of the text? So that's my question. What impact does the line have on the meaning of the text? So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And then it asks me something else. It says use details. So what I want you guys to know is that anytime you see the word details, all this word means is quotes. So I'm just going to put a little note to myself in here. Again, you don't have to do this. If you're doing this on paper, you can write it down. But if you're typing on the computer, you don't have to do this. So I'm going to do all, and this means quotes. So details mean quotes. And then the word impact, when you're looking at when it's asking you, well, what impact does it have? It's asking you what effect. So I'm going to put the word effect here in all caps. So that's what the question is asking. What effect does this quote have on the entire story? So when we're looking at questions like this, we don't know the impact that it has because we haven't read the story, which is why we need to read it. So this is not a question that I can kind of just read the line and figure it out. I'm going to have to read the story because I don't understand what it means. And then I'm actually going to have to pull quotes from the story to support my answer. So I already have 2 things highlighted, so that's how many sentences I need to write. Notice, I need to use this as my sentence stem. So whenever you have a question where it says what does or what impact or how can you make meaning, anything like that, you always want to use the question as part of your answer. So the words that I want to take out are my question words. So I'm going to take out what and I'm going to take out does. So if I'm writing this as a sentence stem, I can put the impact that the line has on the meaning of the text is. And then I'll write my answer there. So notice I took part of that question and now it's my sentence stem. And so I'll write my answer and then provide quotes. All right. For number 3, it says read the following line from the text. So here we have another quote. It says he came home the same way, the front door slamming open, his cap on the floor, and the voice suddenly became a raucous shouting. Isn't anybody here? Using context clues from the sentence, what is the likely meaning of the word raucous? So I have my question here. So that means I'm going to need 1 sentence. Notice it doesn't ask me for any details. It's not saying find quotes to support your answer. It's not saying provide me any reasoning. All it wants you to note is what does that word mean? So I'm using part of my question as my answer. So it says what is the likely meaning? I'm going to take out the what is and use this part here as my sentence stem. So I'm going to write that down. So the likely meaning of the word raucous is, I'm going to put that in bold so you can see it. That's your sentence stem. And then you would tell me what you think the word means. So since I'm using context clues, it doesn't tell me that I need to read the entire story to figure out what this word means. I just need to read this sentence. So this is a question that you could answer right now that you don't have to look back in the text for. So, number 4. It's asking, how would telling the story from Lori's dad's point of view? So I'm going to go ahead and highlight Lori's dad's point of view. So that lets me know where to look. Create a humorous situation. So the word humorous, stemming from the word humor, means funny. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that down in here in this question so I know that that's what that means. So humor means funny. So from the dad's point of view, how would this situation or how would this story be funny? Again, it's not asking you to provide any details. It doesn't say use any quotes from the story, provide reasoning. It's just asking, what, in your opinion, how would this make the story funny? And so you would just answer the question. So this is something else I would have to read the story for, because I don't know who Lori is. I don't know who the dad is. I don't even know what's happening in the story to be able to answer this question. So this is something that I'm going to have to look for in the story. All right. Last but not least, the fifth question is asking you to draw on a story that we've already read. So we already read Thief and His Mother. So it says, how does the author's portrayal? So when it's talking about a portrayal is how does he write the mom in this story and how does it compare to Thief and His Mother? So what you're doing is comparing both moms. I'm going to highlight that word. So what makes the moms the same and what makes them different? So that's all you're answering down here. Again, this question is not asking for any quotes. It doesn't ask you to put any details in. All it's asking you to do is, can you compare and contrast them? What are some things that they have the same? What are some things that they do differently? How are they alike? So how can we compare them? Or how are they different? So that's what you're doing for question number 5. So again, we have to read this story first because we don't know how the mom is in this story. But we have read Thief and His Mother, so we know about that mom. She wasn't a good mom. So we're going to start with reading the story. And I feel like once we read paragraph number 1, we can answer number 3 and figure out what the word raucous means. All right, so paragraph 1. You can also pause this video and read it aloud to yourself if you'd like. If you're not sure of the words, you can also listen to me. Just bear with my voice. I am trying my best. All right. So we are starting with paragraph 1. I'm right up here. So let me see if I can scoot that over. So the day my son Lori started kindergarten, he renounced corduroy overalls with bibs and began wearing blue jeans with a belt. I watched him go off first morning with the older girl next door, seeing clearly that an era of my life was ended. My sweet-voiced nursery school to be replaced by a long-trousered, swaggering character who forgot to stop at the corner and wave goodbye to me. So what's happening so far is there's a mom. She's watching her baby boy go from preschool to kindergarten. He no longer wants to wear his corduroy overall and his bib. So when it means renounce, that means he's like, no, mom, I'm never wearing that again. I'm a big boy now. I'm wearing jeans and my belt. So that's what it means to renounce. When you renounce something, you're like, yeah, no way. Heck no. So she's like, my little baby boy is going from a sweet little cute kid to now he has swagger and he doesn't even wave goodbye to me. So think about the last time your mom was trying to give you a kiss goodbye for school and you're like, yeah, mom, get off me. My friends are right in front of me. That's basically what he's doing. So I'll continue. He came home the same way, the front door slamming open, his cap on the floor, and the voice suddenly became a raucous shouting. Isn't anybody here? So if we go back to question number 3, what do we think the word raucous means? So notice there's some context clues. It says by the front door slamming open, and there's shouting. So what do we think the word raucous means? Because he went from a sweet, cute little boy to now he's slamming doors and he's yelling in my house. So if you said you think that the word raucous means loud, that's exactly what it means. So down for number 3, we're going to say the likely meaning of the word raucous is, you can say, is loud. Sorry, it's in all caps. Is loud. You can put obnoxious. You can say aggressive. Any of those words work for me. So if you put loud, that's totally fine. If you say obnoxious or aggressive, any of those words work for me. So that would be your answer to number 3. So that is the only answer I'm giving you this entire prompt. So the rest of this, you're going to be working to figure it out, but I'm going to guide you on how to answer those questions. So let's continue reading. So we are answered number 3. Remember, we're looking for the dad's point of view. We have to figure out what this line, we don't have a Charles in the kindergarten, how it affects the story. And then we're looking for our theme. So those are 3 things that we need to be looking for. All right, so let me go all the way back up. So I'm on paragraph number 2. At lunch, he spoke insolently to his father, spilled his baby sister's milk, and remarked that his teacher said we were not to take the name of the Lord in vain. So when you're speaking to somebody insolently, you're being very rude. So that's what the word insolently means. So go ahead and highlight this word. So to be insolent means you're being very rude. So Laurie is slamming doors, he's hollering and yelling at everybody, and now he's being rude to his dad. And then he's spilling his baby sister's milk. So how was school today? I asked elaborately casual. So that means she's like, yeah, how was school? She's trying to pull information out of him. She's like, tell me about it. All right, he said. Did you learn anything? His father asked. Laurie regarded his father coldly. I didn't learn nothing, he said. Anything, I said. Didn't learn anything. The teacher spanked a boy, though, Laurie said, addressing his bread and butter. For being fresh, he added with his mouth full. What did he do? I asked. Who was it? Laurie thought. It was Charles, he said. He was fresh, and the teacher spanked him and made him stand in the corner. He was awfully fresh. So when someone says the word fresh in this specific context, they're not saying like fresh to death or his clothes were cute or something like that. That's not what fresh means in this context. Fresh means he's being disrespectful. So he's either cussing at the teacher, getting on her last nerves, or like really making her angry. So he's being like, challenging her, being really smart with her, kind of being like a smart aleck. That's what being fresh means. So Charles is doing a whole bunch of stuff in class, and notice that Laurie's kind of rude. So let's go to the bottom. What did he do? I asked again, but Laurie slid off his chair, took a cookie, and left while his father was still saying, see here, young man. So yeah, if Laurie was up in my house, he would have got his little butt toe up. Because number 1, when I'm talking to you, don't walk away from me. Number 2, you're not going to be disrespecting your father, being coldly and being insolent and being rude. And then number 3, you're not going to be slamming doors in my house. So Laurie and Charles both need their little booties whooped. And also, back in 1948, which is when this story was written, teachers were actually allowed to hit children. So we were allowed to give y'all spankings. We could hit y'all. Or if you acted up in class, your neighbors would beat on you or give you a whooping. Your parents would give you a whooping. The principal would give you a whooping. And that's how we discipline. Nowadays, that's against the law. We can't hit y'all yet. Remember. I'm just kidding. I'm not violent. All right. So paragraph number 3, I think. So the next day, Laurie remarked at lunch, as soon as he sat down, well, Charles was bad again today. He grinned enormously and said, today, Charles hit a teacher. Now, y'all know how I feel about that. If y'all hit me, you your mama's child. So when somebody grins enormously, think of the word enormous. It means like really, really big. So first, Laurie's thinking about who this kid is, and now he's grinning when he's telling the story. So what can we think about this? So remember, Laurie's very rude. He's very mean. He doesn't listen to his parents. He be slamming doors. And Charles is also bad. He's hitting the teacher, dang near cussing her out, and getting in trouble every single day. So next part. It says, good heavens, I said, mindful of the Lord's name. I suppose he got spanked again. He sure did, Laurie said. Look up, he said to his father. What? His father said, looking up. Look down, Laurie said. Look at my thumb. Gee, you're dumb. He began to laugh insanely. Ain't no way I'm letting a child call me dumb. I'm popping you. Then it says, for real? My husband is deciding to crawl on the floor as if I can't see him. So embarrassing, bro. Why did Charles hit the teacher? I asked quickly. Because she tried to make him color with red crayons, Laurie said. Charles wanted to color with green crayons, so she hit the teacher and she spanked him. And nobody played with Charles, but every and said nobody played with Charles, but everybody did. My goodness. The third day, it was Wednesday of the first week, Charles bounced a seesaw onto the head of a little girl and made her bleed. And the teacher made him stay inside all during recess. Thursday, Charles had to stand in the corner during story time because he kept pounding his feet on the floor. Friday, Charles was deprived, or that means when you take something away from somebody, of blackboard privileges because he threw chalk. My God, Charles needs his butt whooped. Why is he still at the school? He's never been suspended. He needs to be expelled. He's terrible. Now we're on to Saturday. On Saturday, I remarked to my husband, "Do you think kindergarten is too unsettling for Laurie? All this toughness and bad grammar, and this Charles boy sounds like such a bad influence." "It'll be all right," my husband said reassuringly. So that means he's kind of like patting her on the back. "Bound to be people like this Charles in the world. Might as well meet them now as later." So notice, Laurie is kind of mean, disrespectful, rude to his parents. Charles is a whole nother character. Just think about the little silver teeth kids in your neighborhood. That's exactly who Charles is. The only person that seems to be concerned is the mom. The dad's kind of just like, yeah, and like, you'll be all right. So keep that in mind. So if you're thinking that Laurie and Charles are kind of similar in the way that they act, you're correct. They are very similar. Laurie's not a good kid by the way that he treats his parents, how he kind of bullies his sister, how loud he is, and how disrespectful he is. Charles is also not a good kid. He's throwing seesaws and making little girls bleed. He's hitting on the teacher. Notice if he would have been in my class, he would have been all right. He hasn't been suspended. He loses all his privileges. He gets in trouble all the time. So they're kind of picking up on each other's behaviors. And the only person in the story so far that seems to be concerned is the mom. So if we're thinking about Thief and his mother, remember when the thief was doing all these bad things, his mom was encouraging him. Right now, in this story, the mom seems a little bit concerned. And she's like, yeah, this kid's rubbing off on my kid a little bit too much. So we are on page 2. Sorry, let me get my cursor. On Monday, Laurie came home late, full of news. "Charles," he shouted as he came up the hill. I waited anxiously on the front steps. "Charles," Laurie yelled all the way up the hill. Charles was bad again. "Come right in," I said. As soon as he came close enough, "Lunch is waiting." "You know what Charles did?" he demanded, following me through the door. Charles yelled so bad in school, they sent a boy in from first grade to tell the teacher she had to make Charles keep quiet. And so Charles had to stay after school. And so all the children stayed to watch him. "What did he do?" I asked. "He just sat there," Laurie said, climbing into his chair at the table. "Hi, Pop, you old dust mop," Charles said. "Charles had to stay after school today," I told my husband. "Everyone stayed with him." "What does Charles look like?" my husband asked Laurie. "What's his other name?" "Well, he's bigger than me," Laurie said, "and he doesn't have any rubbers, and he doesn't ever wear a jacket." So this is an old British thing. Rubbers means like your rain boots. So that means it's raining outside and he doesn't have like rain boots or a jacket. And so notice Laurie doesn't explain what Charles looks like. When someone asks you what somebody looks like, you can describe what their hair looks like, their face, kind of what they wear. He's kind of just like, he's bigger than me and he doesn't wear shoes. So keep that in mind as well. Monday night was the first parent-teachers meeting, and only fact that the baby had kept a cold kept me from going. I wanted passionately to meet Charles's mother. On Tuesday, Laurie remarked suddenly, "Our teacher had a friend come to see her in school today." "Charles's mother?" my husband and I asked simultaneously. That means they kind of ask at the same time. "Nah," Laurie said scornfully. "It was a man who came and made us do exercises. We have to touch our toes. Look." He climbed down from his chair and squatted down and touched his toes. "Like this," he said. He got solemnly back into his chair and he said, picking up his fork, "Charles didn't even do exercises." "That's fine," I said heartedly. "Didn't Charles want to do exercises?" "Nah," Lori said. "Charles was so fresh to the teacher's friend, he wasn't let to do exercises." "Fresh again," I said. "He kicked the teacher's friend," Lori said. "The teacher's friend told Charles to touch his toes like I just did, and Charles kicked him." Mm-mm-mm. Let Charles would have been at Curtis Middle School, he wouldn't have survived. "What are they going to do about Charles, do you suppose?" Lori's father asked him. Lori shrugged elaborately. "Throw him out of school, I guess," he said. Wednesday and Thursday were routine. Charles yelled during story hour and hit a boy in the stomach and made him cry. On Friday, Charles stayed after school again, and so did all the other children. With the third week of kindergarten, Charles was an institution in our family. The baby was being a Charles when she cried all the afternoon. Lori did a Charles when he filled his wagon full of mud and pulled it through the kitchen. Even my husband, when he caught his elbow in the telephone cord and pulled the telephone ashtray and a bowl of flowers off the table, said after the first minute, "Looks like Charles." I want you to highlight this paragraph. So, what they're saying is everything bad that happens in their house, they're blaming it on Charles. So, when the baby starts crying all afternoon, they're like, "Oh, they're pulling a Charles." When the dad kind of messes up and makes a big mess on the kitchen table, they're like, "There's a Charles." And then the same with Lori, who's dragging mud through the kitchen. Remind you, Lori is just as bad as Charles is. He's basically pulling a Charles. So they're making this a thing in their house where all the bad stuff that happens, they're blaming it on Charles. So I want you to keep that in mind. So we are almost done. Thank you for bearing with me. During the third and fourth weeks, it looks like the reformation in Charles. Lori reported grimly at lunch on Thursday of the third week. "Charles was so good today, the teacher gave him an apple." "What?" I said, and my husband added warily, "You mean Charles?" "Charles," Lori said. "He gave the crowns around, he picked up books afterward, and the teacher said he was her helper." "What happened?" I asked incredulously. So incredulously means like, what happened? That's what she means. "He was her helper, that's all," Lori said and shrugged. "Can this be true about Charles?" I asked my husband that night. "Can something like this happen?" "Wait and see," my husband said cynically. "When you've got Charles to deal with, this may mean he's only plotting." So when somebody's being cynical, they're kind of just being sarcastic. So he's like, "Wait and see. We gonna see," type thing. He seemed to be wrong. For over a week, Charles was the teacher's helper. Each day he handed things out and he picked things up. No one had to stay after school. "The PTA's meetings is next week again," I told my husband one evening. "I'm going to find Charles's mother there." "Ask her what happened to Charles," my husband said. "I'd like to know." "I'd like to know myself," I said. All right, here we are on the last page. On Friday of that week, things were back to normal. "You know what Charles did today?" Lori demanded at the lunch table in a voice slightly awed. "He told a little girl to say a word, and she said it, and the teacher washed her mouth out with soap." And Charles laughed. So I bet you he's telling her to say bad words. Oops. "What word?" his father asked unwisely, and Lori said, "I'll have to whisper it to you. It's so bad." He got down off his chair, went around to his father. His father bent his head down, and Lori whispered joyfully. His father's eyes widened. "Did Charles tell the little girl to say that?" he asked respectfully. "She said it twice," Lori said. "Charles told her to say it twice." "What happened to Charles?" my husband asked. "Nothing," Lori said. "He was passing out crayons." So again, remember when the dad said he might be plotting something? Here we go. So Monday morning, Charles abandoned the little girl and said the evil word himself 3 or 4 times, getting his mouth washed out with soap each time. He also threw chalk. My husband came to the door with me that evening as I set out for the PTA meeting. Invite her over for a cup of tea after the meeting, he said. I want to get a good look at her. If only she's there, I said prayerfully. She'll be there, my husband said. I don't see how they could hold a PTA meeting without Charles's mother. So, he's being sarcastic. At the meeting, I sat restlessly, scanning each comfortable, matronly face, trying to determine which one hid the secret of Charles. None of them looked to me haggard enough. No one stood up in a meeting and apologized for the way her son had been acting. No one mentioned Charles. So it doesn't seem like she showed up again. After the meeting, I identified and sought out Lori's kindergarten teacher. She had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate cake. I had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of marshmallow cake. We maneuvered up to one another cautiously and smiled. So when you're walking up to somebody cautiously, you're kind of just like, ooh, I don't think I want to get close to them. Okay, I kind of want to get close to them. So they're kind of just like trying to avoid each other, but they end up kind of meeting up. So usually when teachers do that with your parent, I want you to think about that when it's parent-teacher night and your parents knows that you're bad as heck and you be acting up in my classroom and they kind of just don't want to admit that you're their kid. That's how this teacher is acting. So, I've been so anxious to meet you, I said. I'm Lori's mother. We're all so interested in Lori, she said. Well, he certainly likes kindergarten, I said. He talks about it all the time. Notice, we had a little trouble adjusting the first week or so, she said primly. But now he's a fine little helper, with occasional lapses, of course. Lori usually adjusts very quickly, I said. I suppose this time it's Charles's influence. Charles? Yes, I said, laughing. You must have your hands full in that kindergarten with Charles. Charles, she said. We don't have a Charles in the kindergarten. So, I want you to think about who Charles actually is. So, Lori is disrespectful. He pulls mud through the kitchen. He picks on his little sister. He's disrespectful to his dad. He doesn't listen to his mom. Charles doesn't listen to the teacher, hits the teacher, says bad words, real disrespectful, and likes to beat up on little girls. They're the same person. So Charles does not exist. Charles is actually Lori. So now how do you think the mom feels when she's like, I've been trying to meet this mom all weekend, every PTA meeting, and she's never there, and comes to find out she's Charles's mother. So now you're going to answer question number 1. So the mom did all that judging and she's talking so bad about Charles's mom, like, oh my God, like, how can you have a kid like that? He's a bad influence. Oh my goodness. And she just thinks my poor little baby is being influenced. That's not true. So now you're going to write or answer question number 1. What's my theme? Your sentence stem is going to be the theme in the story. You're going to put your quotation marks, Charles, by Shirley Jackson is. This is sentence number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in bold for you. You're going to tell me what your theme is. Your second sentence is going to be, this is evident in the text when it says, comma, you're going to put your quotation marks, find your quote. I'm going to put a quote here. And then your citation. So remember, it's Jackson. And then I'm not going to put a page number. I'm just going to put the number sign. You are going to find a quote and make sure that you include the page number. So it's either going to be on pages 1, 2, or 3. So go ahead and put your page number there. That is sentence number 2. Your last sentence is going to be, this demonstrates that the theme is, whatever you put your theme, because, and explain it. So again, your first sentence is, the theme in the story Charles by Shirley Jackson is, tell me whatever you think the theme is. You're going to write it down. And then your second sentence is, this is evident in the text when it says, you're going to put a quote there. Do not put a quote here. I want you to actually take a quote from the story. You're going to use the author's last name, your page number, and remember your period goes after your citation. And then you're going to include your explanation where it says, this demonstrates that the theme is whatever you said that your theme was, because, and then tell me why. And I spelled the word because wrong. So that is how you answer question number 1. So now that we have question number 2, we read the entire story. So this whole story, we're thinking Charles is 2 separate people. Charles and Laurie are not the same people. They're not, friends or anything like that. We thought Charles was this super duper bad kid and Laurie is just having to suffer in class because this kid is acting up. But comes to find out, the mom is revealed by the kindergarten teacher that Charles does not exist, that Laurie is the one that's suffering, because she said Laurie had a rough couple weeks. He had a rough first week and he became a little helper. That's the same thing that happened to Charles. Charles had a rough first week and he also became the helper. So they're the same people. And so when she says at the end of the story, we don't have a Charles in kindergarten, how does that affect the story? So what impact does that have on you as the reader? You're thinking Charles is a whole separate person just to find out at the end that he doesn't even exist. So what effect does that have? So again, we have our sentence stem here. The impact that the line has on the meaning of the text is what? How does that make the story change? What does it make the story feel like now that you know this huge bombshell at the end of the story? So that's how you're going to answer question number 2. We've already done number 3 together. And so now you're going to answer number 4. So if you go back in the story, you're going to find that the only person who was stressing about Charles was mom. Dad was kind of like, yeah, sure, honey. Make sure you go to that PTA meeting. I'm sure she'll be there. And remember, he was talking to her cynically and kind of just reassuring her. And he was kind of taking this as a joke. He was not taking this serious at all. So what does that tell you about the dad? Does that tell you that the dad was also worried about Charles? Did the dad think that Charles was another person? Or was he kind of side-eyeing his son? So you're going to find that out, or think about that question and then answer. If we told this story from the dad's point of view, how would this be funny? And now last but not least, how are we going to compare Charles's mom to the thief and his mother's mom? So we're thinking about thief and his mother. The boy was stealing and doing all these bad things, and his mom was encouraging him. However, in this story, when Laurie is acting up, or he's kind of being mean to his dad, or he's missaying things and his mom has to correct him, she's trying to correct his behavior. So that's something that I would add in there. So I want you to think about some other things that make the moms the same or different, and go ahead and write those down. So your sentence stem would be, the mom or the mother in Charles is the same, or you can put different, from the mother in the thief and his mother. Make sure you put quotes around those. And then I'm going to add because. Keep spelling because wrong. ... So that's your sentence stem. So I hope this was helpful for you. Again, I'm not giving you any answers. Do your best. We're going to go over this in class, or we're going to go over this if you want to one-on-one, and we'll talk about these questions. So please get this done. This is worth, 35 points. Question number 1 is 25 out of the 35 points. That one holds the most weight because I want to make sure that you're able to write a theme, you're able to find sound evidence, and that you're able to give me reasoning. The rest of the questions still have some weight to them, but question number 1 is the most important. I still need you to complete this. This is due this Friday. Again, if you don't get your homework done on time, you have until 1 week after the unit ends to get this in. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for bearing with me on my voice. Please be safe. Make sure you guys wear a mask and make sure you stay safe outside. Bye.